Good morning, everyone. Just to give a few colleagues some time to join, so maybe 3 minutes, then we should be able to start by 11:04, 11:05. Okay. Hi, Kotilde. We are about to begin. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Hi, Devon.
Hi, Ahmed. How are you?
Fine, fine. And you?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, we are about to begin the next 1 minute.
Okay. So there is no translator today?
No, we'll announce the language. So just a minute when you start, then we'll do the announcement.
Okay. When we come to start, wait, how many minutes you wait?
Sorry?
How many minutes we wait?
Just 1 minute. Yes. Okay, we are ready now to start.
Okay, thank you. Can you share all the presentation?
Yes, we will. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and good afternoon from wherever you are joining us. We would like to thank you all for joining us today for this insightful webinar on fisheries improvement projects and the MSC Improvement Program webinar. So this is a webinar in collaboration with the Marine Stewardship Council, who are the ones leading us today. And my name is Divon Mwamba. I work for the Southwest Indian Ocean Tuna Forum as the program officer and also part of the secretariat team. So I'd like to request everyone to introduce themselves on the chat. Just write your name, your organization, and also where you're joining us from. Also like to request if you can keep our mics off until the time of Q&A, kindly. Yeah. So just make sure you introduce yourself on the chat box and tell us your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from. So in this moment, I'd like to quickly take you through the agenda of the webinar. So we'll start off with the welcome remarks, which I'm currently doing now. Then I'll take you through an introduction of the webinar, sharing with you the objectives of the webinar, the expected outcome, as well as the language announcement that we will make on how to have the captions for different languages that are within the webinar. Then the next session will be now introducing Dr. Vineetha, who will take us through the fisheries improvement projects. Then we'll invite Dr. Andrew Gordon also to take us through the MSC Improvement Program. That will take us until 12:05 p.m. So for the session for Dr. Vineetha, we'll have it starting from maybe 11:10 to 11:50, around 50 minutes. Then we'll introduce Dr. Andrew for the MSC Improvement Program. Then we'll do a Q&A for 20 minutes, which will give an room for you to ask any questions that you may have and everything pending. Then we'll do closing remarks and way forward by 12:30. Yeah. Okay. So maybe to share on the objectives of this webinar. So the webinar will provide an introduction to the fisheries improvement projects on the fisheries improvement project concept, discussing why they are a useful tool for improving fisheries sustainability. Also identifying the steps involved in developing fisheries improvement projects and where to find resources to assist in their development. Also, a case study of the ash to mud clam fishery in Indian Ocean will be provided during this webinar. Then finally, we will introduce you to the newly launched MSC Improvement Program. Yeah. So in terms of what to expect is that you should expect to gain an increased understanding of the purpose of the fisheries improvement projects and information on how to establish a fisheries improvement project. Then also you'll be able to become more familiar with the newly launched MSC Improvement Program. So these are the two key main expected outcomes from this webinar. Yes, now in terms of the language, so we do recognize the diversity of languages in this webinar in the region, that is the SWIO region, that is the Portuguese and the French, but the webinar will be conducted in French. However, it will be in English, sorry. The webinar will be conducted in English. However, we'll be using a translation of subtitles provided through the Zoom platform. And for this, I'd like to invite Dr. Andrew, who will show you how to triangle this translation subtitles provided by the Zoom platform.
Thanks very much, Devin.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll just take you through how you can activate the captions. So if you have a look at the ribbon at the bottom of your screen, you should see this show captions. Let me just get my laser pointer. Show captions icon here, and you can click on the up arrow then, and it should bring up this screen here. So just make sure that this translation toggle is turned on, so it should go to blue, and then you can choose what caption language you would like to be in the caption that runs along the bottom of the screen. Then once you've done that, you can go to caption settings if you need to change the font size or the color of the font, for example, of the captions running along the bottom there. So I encourage you to try and do that now quickly, and we can perhaps, if anybody has any particular issues, we can quickly deal with those before we start with the presentations. So just go along to the captions button down here, press the up arrow, turn on the translation, choose your caption language, French or Portuguese, and then if it should start, the caption should start immediately running along the bottom of the screen. And if you find that you need to change the font to make it a bit bigger, you can actually just go to the caption settings and increase the font there. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen now, and just we can just see if there are any hands up with anybody having any problems. Nope, it looks like it's okay. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and you can fiddle with it as we're going through the talk. So, well, perhaps I can then introduce our next speaker, which is Dr. Vineetha Aravind.
Sorry, Andrew, before you
Yes, sure.
introduce Doctor, just to announce that we'll be recording the webinar. So, yeah.
Yes, great, thanks. Dr. Vineetha Aravind, and she hails from India. She's an experienced FIP manager and auditor. She's currently managing 2 trawl fishery FIPs in Kerala in India, and has conducted 6 third-year updates that are done through Fishery Progress audit updates. And she's an auditor for the MSC, for Aquaculture Stewardship Council, MarinTrust and Friend of the Sea programs. And she's got great experience about FIPs, implementing FIPs and auditing FIPs from both India, but the greater Indian Ocean region as well. So I'd like to hand over to Dr. Vineetha to share her screen, and we look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Andrew. So I'll just share my screen and we'll start the presentation. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So we are talking about the fishery improvement projects, or the FIPs. And this is just a line I got about FIPs from a WWF site. So it's saying that FIPs are a pathway to ensure a fishery is sustainable and its environmental impacts are minimized. So we will see what the FIP is and how it can be implemented, why we have to go for a FIP. These are the things which, so these are the things which we are going to see today. So I just thought maybe I'll introduce it in this way, that is 5W and 1H, or sometimes we humorously call it the 5 wives and 1 husband. That is the 5W, who, were, why, when, and what, and how. So we'll see how it can be done. So why a FIP? Why a fishery should enter into a fishery improvement program? So one of the major reason is, like, when we are doing a fishing, we actually do not know whether the fish stock is sustainable or not, because we are not seeing whether it is dwindling or it is flourishing. We are not seeing that. So one of the major threats in the ocean is unsustainable fishing, because we cannot fathom how many fish is left in the sea. But if there is a balance, then it can actually benefit the people. At the same time, it will not impair the stock also. So just to make sure that the fishing practices we are following is not taking a big toll on the marine environment and also the ecosystem, we are trying to have a FIP. So a FIP is a way to manage a fishery sustainably. How to sustainably manage a fishery. That is what we are seeing through a FIP. So what is actually a FIP? FIP is like a project which involves a lot of stakeholders. That is, it's a multi-stakeholder effort, and it intends in improving the fishing practices and management so that that particular species which we are managing, that is thriving, the habitat is thriving, that is, its effect on the habitat is minimized, and the people who are dependent on the fishery, they are also thriving. So it is a multi-pronged approach which involves many stakeholders. And also, we can see that this project actually uses the power of the private sector to incentivize positive changes towards sustainability. So how the private sector is incentivizing it? Sometimes a market decides whether they want to procure from a sustainable fishery. In that case, the market can choose if it is coming from a sustainable fishery. So a fishery which has entered into the FIP can actually benefit from this market advantage. And because a fishery has entered into a FIP, there will be new changes in the policies, the management changes, so that that entire region benefits from that. And which fishery can enter into a FIP? Any fishery can enter into a FIP. It can be a large-scale industrial fleet, or it can be a small-scale localized fishery. Any fishery can enter into a FIP and it can benefit from the FIP. So why we are entering into the FIP, there is another way to look into that is like the problems faced by a large-scale fleet is not the same as a small-scale fishery. So that's why this is very important. It differs greatly across the fisheries and local solutions are needed. So a person who is working on a large-scale industrial fleet cannot tell a small-scale fishery, which is just using a hand rake or a gill net, how to change their fisheries to do it sustainably. So that needs local solutions. So it can be used anywhere. Any fishery can enter into that, and new solutions have to come up based on the experience of the people involved in that and the type of fishery. Now, when should a fishery enter into a FIP? A fishery which wants to improve its sustainability, that is, if it wants to make sure that the stock is abundant, or the environmental impact of the fishery is maintained at a lower level, then it can enter into a FIP. So it can be the decision of the FIP, the fishery, or the producers involved in the fishery, or it can be the involvement of the market, which is deciding that, okay, we are going to source seafood only from sustainable resources. Then it can enter into a FIP with the help of the producers. And what's the time period of a FIP? It can be, or it is usually said that a FIP runs for 5 years. But it's not necessary that the FIP has to take 5 years. It can end before if it has attained the goals, or it can take even more time. So there are FIPs which are running for 10 years or even more and still improving because they might be having more problems to find solutions. So it could run a little more longer, but usually the time period which is set is like 5 years. So when you're trying to approach the FIP, it can be in this way, that is the top down, that is the major buyers are telling the fishery that you have to start a FIP and you have to improve the sustainability. So if it is particularly targeting a market, and that market is looking for sustainable seafood, then it can be the market targeting the fishery and telling them to improve their sustainability. Or it can be the fishery which is deciding, okay, we have to have a sustainable fishery, we have to reduce the environmental impact, we have to manage our fishery better. Then it is called the bottom-up approach. Whichever be the approach, whether you are using the top-down approach or the bottom-up approach, the final result is the fishery is sustainable, its impact on the environment is low, and the management is better. Now, who will enter into a FIP, or who all are involved in the FIP? The FIP is actually a multi-stakeholder effort. So who is a stakeholder? Any person who has a stake in the improvement of the fishery is a stakeholder. So it can be a person, it can be an organization. So it can be like the fishers who are involved in the fishery. The major stakeholder is always the fishers who are directly in contact with the fishery. Then the government, which is managing the fishery. Then NGOs like WWF, they can be part of the FIP. And then the experts, that is the research people who make the stock assessment and tell us what's the status of the stock, they are all part of the FIP stakeholders. So here you can see a representation of the various stakeholders, like there are the fishers, the government, then the industry, then NGOs, fishery experts, all of them form part of the FIP. Now, how we can implement a FIP? So there are various stages through which we go through when we are implementing a FIP, or when we start thinking about a FIP. There are 6 stages. It starts with a 0 stage, that is a FIP identification stage. So first of all, we have to decide which is our target fishery. And we have to do a supply chain analysis to understand who else is involved in this. So who are the other stakeholders other than the producers or the fishers? Who are the other stakeholders who are involved in the supply chain? Whether it provides a market leverage. So we try to identify a fishery which has a good market leverage, which will get support from the different stakeholders, and start the FIP. So that is identifying the FIP. So if a country or a region is thinking about starting a FIP, this will be the first step, identifying the fishery which has to enter into the FIP. Then the next step is a FIP development. So usually a FIP is, we can say that it is like a pathway which is leading to a Marine Stewardship Council certification or an MSC certification. But it is not always necessary that a fishery which is entering into a FIP should get an MSC certification. That is again a decision which has to be made after the goals of the FIP is completed, whether it should enter into an MSC certification process or not. That is decided later. But when we start a FIP, once we identify the FIP, we will think about what actions to be done based on the MSC fishery standard. So the fishery's current performance is evaluated against the MSC fishery standard. So MSC puts around 28 performance indicators, and the fishery is evaluated against that, which is called a pre-assessment, and gaps are identified. So if it has to enter into an MSC certification, what all gaps have to be filled, or what all changes this particular fishery has to make so that it can enter into an MSC standard or an MSC certification. It will get certified by MSC. So why MSC? That's because MSC certification is an eco-labeling, and there are various other eco-labeling systems too, or certifications too. But MSC is considered as one of the top-notch certification, which covers almost all the areas of the fishery. which makes sure that the stock is sustainable, the environment is good, and the management is great. So that will be the first step, that is the FIP development. And the stakeholders who are involved in the fishery, they are recruited for this. So that's the first step. Once we identify the fishery, then the next step is the FIP development. Then we go for FIP launching. So to launch a FIP, first the gap analysis has to be done, then a work plan has to be made. So what is a work plan? A work plan is a document which is telling us that we have to cover these actions so that the fishery is sustainable. So that is called an action plan or a work plan. So that is finalized and it is posted publicly. Where do we post this? This is usually posted in a website called fisheryprogress.org. And this website is accessible to anyone who can make a login ID and password. So you can view the FIPs all over the world through this particular website. So it is posted publicly, and we will also decide on a budget before launching the FIP. Maybe for 3 years or 5 years, we are deciding on a budget and we launch the FIP. So that means we start the action plan implementation. So that's the next step, the implementation of the action plan. So the action plan usually has steps which are needed to enter or close the gaps from the pre-assessment to a complete assessment. And all these are listed down in the action plan with a timeline. So there will be a FIP implementer, someone who knows about the standards, and someone who knows about the fishery will be a FIP implementer. And the major stakeholders, who the FIP implementer usually coordinates with the major stakeholders. And will contact each stakeholder to tell them that, okay, you have to do this particular action. So that's how a FIP is implemented. And once we start implementing the FIP, then we start seeing improvements in practices and management. We will come more into this later. So that we can see modified fishing practices, major changes. So finally, it leads to improvements on the water, that is the stock, the habitat, the bycatch. All these things are better managed. So this is how we go through a FIP. Now, what are the requirements of a FIP? The first and foremost requirement is the active participation of supply chain companies and other stakeholders. Remember, we talked about identifying this supply chain. So these partners have to be identified, and we have to ensure that they are participating in the FIP. Then, having a work plan and a budget and deadlines, that is, the timeline also has to be decided. The timeline may get extended, but still we have to try to stick to the timeline. It should not go endlessly. So these have to be developed. So a work plan is developed, then objectives are identified, and again time bound. And public commitment to the FIP and to invest money. Someone has to invest money. So there are agencies which might be able to help. There could be the market which is investing in the FIP, or it could be the producers who are investing in the FIP, or it could be the government which is investing in the FIP. But we have to identify organizations or parties which are interested to donate money for the development of the FIP. And there should be some way to track the progress. So again, the fisheryprogress.org helps us to track the progress, because once you launch the FIP in fisheryprogress.org, you have to report every 6 months, and every year you have to show the changes, major changes happening. So this can be tracked by anyone who wants to check the progress of the fishery. So this is the requirement of the FIP. And to understand that the FIP is not a certification, just because you are in the FIP, you cannot say that your fishery is ecolabeled. You cannot say that my fishery is in a FIP, so I have to get the certification. No, it is not ensuring a certification. It just ensures that the fishery is moving towards sustainability or is taking an effort to be sustainable. A FIP is not an end goal. It is like a pathway towards an end goal. And what's our end goal? Our end goal is sustainability. Then, FIP is not guaranteeing a better export market. No, it is not for guaranteeing a better export market or better market accessibility, but many times it leads to better market accessibility. That is true, but it is not the rule. And there is no rule that the FIP has to be completed in 5 years. It can complete before 5 years, or it can even extend beyond. So when you're looking at this table, you can see what changes can happen to a fishery before we enter into the FIP. This is the status. And during the FIP, these are the changes which we make. And then after the FIP, this will be the goal or the outcome, you can say. So in terms of the stock status, the particular target species we are thinking about, the species the fishery is targeting. Before we enter into the FIP, there may not be stock status. I'm not saying there will not be any stock status analysis, but most of the time, a fishery which is entering into a FIP may not have a stock status analysis, or the stock status is not clearly known. Sometimes there will be some stock status analysis, but not with reference points. That is, there will not be a limit reference point or a target reference point, so that the fishery cannot be managed. And there is no, I will use not monitoring, but maybe data collection may not be very regular. So once we enter into a FIP, what happens? The research organizations involved in the FIP will start identifying stock assessment models which are particularly effective for this species which the fishery is targeting. And later they might develop reference points, and there will be measures for data collection. So it could be through fishery inspectors or enumerators or data collectors, whatever it could be. And a periodicity is determined, and then management measures can be developed. So what happens? What will be the outcome? The stock status of the particular species is known with reference points with which it can be managed. So the fishery is better managed, and the stock status is regularly assessed. It makes sure that the data is collected regularly. Again, what happens to the stock if it is not in the FIP? If the stock is declining, what happens? The fishery managers do not know what to do. The fishers do not know what to do. There are no measures and strategies in case the stock is declining. But once it enters into a FIP, harvest control rules, that is a set of measures or a strategy, is developed so that if the stock status is reduced, these steps have to be taken. So there is a set rule which is telling what the fishery managers or the organization which is managing, the government which is managing, has to do if a fishery or the stock is reducing or declining. So harvest strategy is developed, and once the FIP is established, we know for sure that in case the stock status is declining, XCR and HS is applied. Again, the fishery, even if it is targeting a particular species, it might have impacts on other species. And when there is no FIP, we may not know the impact of the fishery on other species. But once we are in FIP, we start collecting data on the impact of the fishery on other species, how it affects other species. We start collecting data on that and develop management measures for that. so that once the FIP is completed, the impact of the fishery on other species is known and is managed. The same happens to endangered, threatened, and protected species. The impact of the fishery on the ETP species may not be known if it is not in FIP, but once it is in FIP, we start monitoring it, collecting data on that, and in case the management is necessary, the management is applied so that the impact is managed. Again, the impact of the fishery on the habitat and the ecosystem may not be known earlier. And with a FIP, we need to have studies on that. So we study that, measures are developed, data is collected, and management is developed so that the fisheries' impact on habitat and ecosystem is managed. Before entering into a FIP, there may not be a legal framework or maybe a loose legal framework where rules are not completely followed or particular rules are not there. So once the fishery enters into a FIP, a legal framework is developed and a legal framework will be available to manage the fishery. And along with that comes consultation, the roles and responsibilities of different parties. All these are developed during the FIP so that the fishery can be managed. We know where to go to have this particular problem resolved. So if the fishers are having a particular problem, to whom they have to go. Or if the government wants to make some changes, how they should approach the fishers. So there will be a correct flow for the decision-making process. And the objectives are well defined in the long term, and the fishery specific objectives are well defined so that the fishery is managed sustainably. And the decision making, if for a fishery which is not in FIP, may not have the consent of all the parties involved in the fisheries to make a particular decision. Sometimes in many fisheries, what happens is the management organization, maybe the government, takes a decision or forms a new rule or regulation and just imply it on the fisheries. Just tell the fishers to follow that. But once we are in a FIP, then it is made sure that all the concerned parties are involved in the decision making. The local knowledge, the traditional knowledge which is available with the fishers is used while a decision is made. So that once a decision is made or a rule or regulation is made with the help of the research organization and the government, once they impose that on the fishers may not feel that it is unnecessarily imposed on them, because they also have a say while making the rules and regulation. So it is like a participatory management. And because all the concerned parties are involved in decision making, non-compliance will not be a very big issue, and enforcement is much more easier. There will be a system for enforcement and compliance can be assured. And monitoring, control, and evaluation, the MCS system will be better developed because the stock is regularly monitored and the fishery rules and regulations are enforced and fisheries performance is evaluated regularly. Therefore, the MCS system is working well. So these are the changes you will see when a fishery enters into a FIP. And what are the impacts of the FIP? So the FIP impacts are again multifold. So the first thing is like better stakeholder engagement. Every stakeholder who is involved with the fishery feels like they have some ownership in the fishery. So there is an example given here. Buyers and suppliers learn about issues at the FIP. Otherwise, the buyers may not know about the issues related to the fishery. They just buy the fish and go away. But once we start the FIP and once it is publicly available, then all the stakeholders involved in the FIP will start understanding, okay, these are the problems related to the fishery. And this is what I can do for that. So they also start feeling an ownership with the FIP. So better stakeholder engagement, changes in the government policies. So limiting the bycatch, see this example. So this red shrimp FIP in Argentina led to limiting the bycatch to 15%. So this resolution was made because of the FIP, because they understood that the bycatch has to be limited so that the impact of the fishery can be reduced or better managed. So a major change in the policy. Then it can lead to additional resources getting unlocked or new resources coming into the fishery. So here in this example, you can see that the Ecuadorian government adopted a national plan of action for the conservation and management of mahi-mahi, which committed the Ecuadorian government to use government funds to implement actions. So maybe when you start a FIP, not all stakeholders might be giving funds to improve the FIP, but as there are changes in the fishery, as people start seeing the changes in the fishery, you can start seeing that new players come into place, new stakeholders coming and telling you that, okay, we will also invest in this because we can see changes coming to the fishery. Then the stakeholder behavior changes because they start seeing major changes in the sustainability, the impact of the fishery. So here you can see this example. Bahamas lobster exporters work together with their competitors. Not very easy, but it happened. NGOs and government to improve the fisheries. So the attitudes and behaviors of stakeholders can change as the FIP progresses. And there could be regional, national, and international collaboration because at times it can be like for example, take a fishery of a tuna. Tuna is not limited to one country or one region. It is highly migrant. So there should be cooperation between different nations which are sharing the resources. So it comes that sometimes it will be regional collaboration, sometimes it will be national collaboration, or it can even lead to international collaboration, depending on the type of the fishery. So scientists from different nations can come together, work together to conserve the stock. So it just thinking that, okay, this fishery is limited to this particular region. From that, our horizons expand. We start thinking in a wider perspective. And what are the challenges a FIP faces? There are a lot of challenges. I've just specified 3 of them here. One is different stakeholders will have different needs and incentives. For example, when you start a FIP and you go to the fishers and tell them, okay, we are starting the FIP, the first question will be, what is in it for me? Right? Every stakeholder will ask that question to you. What is in it for me? So for a fisher, the incentive could be a better price, better market price for them. For an exporter, a better market price in their export market. For a government, it could be a well-managed fishery, which it can showcase. For a research organization, more data collection. So for different groups of stakeholders, the needs and incentives can differ. So it is a major challenge to bring all these stakeholders together and tell them that, okay, this is satisfying your particular need here, or this is giving you this particular incentive. That is where the FIP implementer is successful. How to rope in the stakeholder. Then, a FIP is a long-term time and resource commitment. You'll not see a change immediately. Maybe you're working in the FIP for 1 year or 2 years, and you may get all frustrated because you will not see any change. But still, you have to believe that it is a long-term process where a lot of changes are involved and you are laying foundation. You might go to maybe to the government, many times have meetings with the government. The government might promise something, but it will not happen. But you keep on doing this, and after some time, you start seeing small changes here and there. So it is a major commitment in terms of time, in terms of resources. And sometimes we see that the FIP benefits are not shared throughout the supply chain. Again, it will be the FIP implementer's responsibility to make sure that the benefits are trickling down till the producers. Might be the exporter is getting a better market, better price.
It looks like we've lost Vineetha. Should we just give her 10 or 15 seconds just to see if it comes back? Otherwise, perhaps I can
FIP,
take over.
the
There she is.
living conditions of the fishes definitely improve.
Oh dear. It seems like we've lost Vineetha, unfortunately, through some connection issue. I think oh, she's back again. Hi, Vineetha. We lost you there for a second. Are you able
Till
are you
where
able
I
to,
was there?
you had just finished the FIP challenges. And
Okay, then I will
yeah.
finish. Okay.
I think you've got sort of another 10 minutes or so
Yeah, I'll
available.
finish it.
Okay.
Then.
Okay, great. You're not sharing anymore, by the way. It
Yeah,
stopped sharing.
I'll
Okay,
share
perfect.
again. Yeah. Is it visible?
Not quite yet.
Uh,
Let's just give it a moment. Yeah, not yet either.
oh, maybe I will. But can you see my screen? No.
No, not yet.
Okay. Now?
Yeah, something's
Oh,
happening.
okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Now it is okay? You can see my social impact?
Yep, you just have to change it to presentation mode. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now we can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are the changes which you will see in the social scenario of the fishery. That is improved living conditions. Then there could be some changes or a major change in forced labor, slavery, child labor, that area. Because if you have to get a FIP successfully implemented, you have to end all these negative social impacts. Then better distribution of benefits. Then producers have a say in the market. That is, the fishers can decide the market price. May not be always the case, but it could happen. And ensuring better health and safety on job. So the FIP is not just making changes in the sustainability or the environmental impact, it is making changes in the social scenario too. Now, I would like to show you a case study from India. The short-neck clam fishery in Ashtamudi, Kerala. So this fishery was certified in 2014 and the certification ended after 5 years. It did not go for recertification, but is planning to go for recertification in 2025 again. So the species is a type of clam called Paphia malabarica, and the gear is like dive and pick and hand rake. The location is a small estuary called the Ashtamudi estuary in Kerala, India. And the FIP lead was an NGO, WWF India, and it was also supported by the government of Kerala. So why WWF started this FIP? It was because WWF is committed to the development of sustainable resources, and it also wanted the fishers to have better market attention and access, and have wanted to have improved living conditions for the fishers. So these were the reasons for this particular NGO to stop the FIP. And the major challenges were, though the stock status were monitored or data collection was there, but it was not very regular, and the stock assessment process was not with reference points. So one area the FIP has to address was the stock status, a regular data collection, defining reference points, and making sure that this is happening. Maybe like annually progress can be charted. Then the FIP is usually, the FIP is managed by a group of fishers who already had a system, that is during the spat fall or when the seeds were, the juveniles were coming out, they usually stop the fishing. So there was a system, but it was not in the form of a rule or a regulation, and not everyone was involved in that. So one of the major challenges the FIP involved was the stakeholder involvement in decision making and management. So what the FIP did was they developed the Ashtamudi Clam Council, and that led to the first time in India a participatory management system. That is, there came a village management council where the fishers are the major representatives. Then there came a district management council where more managing or the government and the research organizations were also there. Then a state management council where representatives from different fisher organizations came, and the major government people and the research organizations and NGOs were all represented. So this led to the formation of a participatory management and was a major breakthrough in the management of fisheries in Kerala itself, not just for the Ashtamudi clan. And already there was a ban or a self-imposed ban on harvesting the clam during the breeding season or the spat fall season, but it was legalized and a regulation was made. And roles were defined. So a better monitoring and control and surveillance system was imposed there. So these are the lessons learned from the Ashtamudi clam fishery. That is, the stakeholder involvement is the key to any management reforms. A bottom-up approach ensures adherence to management decisions because it was the fishers who decided what to do, what regulations they have to adhere to. And participatory management with a three-tier system, that is the village level, the district level, the state level, this system, it can work wonders so that it is adopted by the government for managing other fisheries too. Now, Kerala state has 222 village level committees, then 9 district level committees, and a single state level committee. So it just comes up. The decisions comes from the bottom up. So this is how a well-managed fishery looks like. That is, the fishery collects information regarding the stock status, the impact on other species, the environment, all these information is collected. This is used to manage the fishery, and you can see the outcome in the waters. That is a thriving fishery, a sustainable fishery. So this is the final outcome you have to envisage when you are thinking about a FIP. Collect information, manage, then see the changes in the water. Now, this is something I just put here. I know this is a bit overwhelming. It is not very necessary, but I just wanted to show you that these are the 3 principles MSC is looking at. This part is entirely dedicated to that particular stock the fishery is targeting, and this part is for the environmental impact, and this is for the management. So there are 28 indicators, and you can see that the ones with this I are the information indicators. That is, this is where you have all the informations. We are making sure that you are having all these informations. Then this is showing that the fishery is well managed, and this is showing the status or the outcome, how that outcome is shown in the water. And this slide shows what are the resources available to FIP implementers. So there is the fisheryprogress.org where you will have tools and resources. So if you want to start a FIP, you can contact them. You can go to their website. You can ask them to give a demonstration or see their video and understand how a FIP has to work, how to upload it to the fishery progress, how to make progress changes, action changes, all these things. Then the SFP is for database on the fishery FIP information. FIP tools are available. Then the Conservation Alliance gives another set of guidelines. Then WWF has an online FIP training course. I have adopted many of these resources which I've shown you from the WWF website, this particular website. Then the online FIP training course is available, and the MSC's Fisheries Improvement Program, which Andrew is going to talk after this. That's another tool. So I think the questions will be addressed later. So we will wait till then, and thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Vineetha. This was a very insightful presentation, and just the information shared has been really great. So as you have said, we'll reserve the questions to the end of the session. So and if you have any other burning question, you can also post it on the chat, meanwhile, as we wait for the end of the session. So I'd like now to invite Dr. Andrew Gordon, who will take us through the MSc program. Welcome, Dr. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Devin. I think, Vineetha, you're still sharing, perhaps. Yeah, you're still sharing your screen there. Perfect. There we go. Thank you very much. So let me just share mine quickly. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So in my presentation then, I'm just going to follow up that really comprehensive summary of FIPs with a description of MSC's improvement program that was recently launched. So the improvement program replaces the In Transition to MSC program, or ITM program, which you may have heard about, and which ran as a pilot from 2019 until a few months ago. So the overall aim of the improvement program is to support fisheries through their improvement journey within a framework that pushes them to make constant and measurable progress towards MSC certification. So it's slightly different to the goals of a normal FIP program, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But first, I'll just provide some context for why the improvement program was developed. As Vineetha mentioned, the sort of challenges of overfishing and unsustainable fishing, and its global problem that threatens ocean wildlife and biodiversity, and importantly, loss of marine life brings further threat to people who rely on seafood for protein and livelihoods. And unfortunately, the data show that overfishing is on the increase. And this graph from the FAO shows the state of the world's marine fish stocks between 1974 and 2021. And as you can see here in the orange, the percentage of overfished stocks has increased from 10% in 1974 to just under 38% in 2021. And the FAO's latest data shows a 2% increase in overfished stocks over a 2-year period. So the necessity really for well-managed fisheries is more urgent now than ever, and the progress on addressing overfishing really needs to become more rapid. So environmental, certification schemes like the MSC are responding to this challenge and have been working for a long time to respond to this challenge. But there are, other responses also going on, as can be seen in this particular slide here. And there's been a significant response over the last few years in terms of an increase in fishery improvement projects around the world. And these are implemented by non-profit and for-profit organizations. So these FIPs aim to increase fishery sustainability, and some retailers will actually source products from them, seeing them as a viable alternative to certified products. And so this has actually just sort of further increased their popularity. So although the progress, within FIPs, there is progress within all FIPs, it can vary with scope and quality. And in a recent global review of FIPs by CEA Consulting found that the rate of improvement of fisheries in FIPs is slower than one would expect. And many are actually not finishing their FIPs, but continuing indefinitely. And so hence the development of the MSC Improvement Program. And the idea is to complement existing FIPs and to increase their rate of improvement with the specific goal of getting MSC certified. So how does it work? It's designed to support fisheries worldwide, regardless of their size or location, that want to make changes necessary to meet the MSC's fisheries standard. And so the idea is the program drives faster rates of improvement by being transparent, independently verified, and time-bound. So basically, it's to support and incentivize fisheries to make faster changes. It follows a similar process to the one that Vineetha described, in that fisheries entering the MSC Improvement Program must have an action plan. That is, they must have had a pre-assessment undertaken, and they must have an action plan that has been agreed by independent auditors, and show that these improvements can take place within a defined period of 5 years. So the important thing here is the independent verification undertaken by conformity assessment bodies, or CABs. And that during this period, the fisheries must make progress, and this is again verified regularly by the independent auditors and made public. Products from fisheries in the improvement program cannot use the MSC Eco label. However, as an added incentive to join the program and accelerate progress, once fisheries have reached the minimum acceptable performance level, which is scoring guidepost 60 on all performance indicators, and they must meet specific traceability requirements of the MSC chain of custody, they then can access MSC certified supply chains. So this means that if they have packaged retail products that contain their produce, they can then include a back of pack statement that states that they're part of the MSC Improvement Program. So then, 75% of any of the revenue from this improvement program will go to the MSC's Ocean Stewardship Fund, which is a fund that supports the development of sustainable fisheries. So the idea is to create an ongoing virtuous cycle where funding of fisheries in the improvement program can help other fisheries entering the improvement program. And then importantly, fisheries in our program, the improvement program, can then apply to the Ocean Stewardship Fund for additional costs to help them with all the implementation actions that they have to undertake when they're moving through the FIP. So the MSC Improvement Program is not meant to compete with FIP websites like fisheryprogress.org, because they have an important role to play in listing a wide array of different FIPs, prospective FIPs, basic FIPs, and comprehensive FIPs. So instead, the MSC Improvement Program aims to complement these by driving meaningful, faster progress in FIPs that want to achieve MSC certification. And this table here shows just quickly what the difference is between the MSC Improvement Program and the Fishery Progress website is. So basically, just quickly, verification in the improvement program is done by accredited conformity assessment bodies, and that is undertaken continually, annually, both in terms of, well, firstly to enter the program and then undertaken annually. There's a commitment for certification from these fisheries entering this program. And there's an important component is a limited time frame of 5 years. So the whole idea is to to try and encourage and provide all the tools available to make these fisheries move a lot faster towards full sustainability status. So then, if you're a prospective fisher or prospective fishery, just want to kind of go through what some of the benefits of joining the MSC Improvement Program is. So firstly, well, you've got added credibility. That's because the MSC has been a global leader in fishery sustainability for the last 25 years. And so this just being part of that sort of program adds credibility to the FIP. And the improvement program also allows sort of fisheries to gain access to MSC's 25 years of experience and network of skills, expertise, and technical guidance, also tools, all of which give the fishery the best chance of achieving MSC certification within that 5-year period. Importantly, then also the fishery would have well, we have extensive retail contacts, which and that can actually mean we can put the fishery in touch with market partners as well. So that can be very useful. Okay. The fishery is listed on the fishery would be listed on MSC's Tracker Fishery website, and so it would have a sort of public-facing platform. And then, if it scores 60. Above 60 and above for all the performance indicators, the fishery can then access the certified supply chains and have this back of pack statement, which can be very useful for some fisheries that are selling into markets that are looking for that kind of assurance. And then lastly, there's the eligibility for financial support from the Ocean Stewardship Fund. So to be eligible, fisheries must be committed to entering certification within a 5-year period. They must also then be within scope of the MSC program. So pretty quickly, that just means they mustn't use destructive fishing methods like poisons or dynamite. The target species must be a wild-caught species and not a bird or marine mammal. And yeah, that's sort of it. There are a number of other ones. Oh, it can't be a full aquaculture species either. Then it must have a pre-assessment within the last 3 years on the MSC's pre-assessment template, and this must have been conducted by or verified by a CAB. And lastly, it must have a credible improvement plan that has also been verified by a conformity assessment body or a CAB. And then the fishery will then use the MSC's improvement tools like the benchmark tracking tool to show progress, which will be verified by the CAB once again. And lastly, it needs a project manager who can dedicate time to implementing these improvements. So to apply for the program, fisheries can enter at any time and can contact a local MSC representative like myself, and I can sort of explain the process, or can contact this website, fisheries@msc.org, or you can visit msc.org/improve for more information. So just to finish off then, I wanted to just share a quick case study that I was involved in. It's the South African albacore pole and line fishery, and it was part of the In Transition to MSC program, which is the predecessor of the MSC Improvement MSC Improvement Program, and it was recently certified. So I just want to take you sort of through the journey through the journey of improvement to certification. So just a quick description. It's obviously pole and line. Targets South Atlantic albacore off the southwest coast of South Africa, out of the harbors of Cape Town and Hout Bay. quite small catch, 5,000 tons. Quite a lot of vessels, though, some of them quite small, others quite large. You can go to sea for quite a long period of time. And although there's limited bycatch and interactions, there is indeed some interaction with birds and sharks and some marine mammals. So just to, the vessel owners, just in terms of the supply chain, the vessel owners sell to local fish traders or marketers who then export to foreign canneries, who then send this product throughout the world. So here is the journey to certification. It first started through a project that was funded by the Dutch Postcode Lottery. They provided money to fisheries in South Africa, Indonesia, and Mexico, and provided them with funding to start the process by paying for the pre-assessment and paid for them to enter into the ITM pilot project. That started in 2018. The pre-assessment was undertaken that year as well. And then in early 2019, WWF South Africa worked with the fishery to develop the action plan. The fishery then applied to enter into the ITM program, was verified by a CAB, and basically entered at the end of 2019. At the same time, then WWF applied for transition assistance funding from the Ocean Stewardship Fund, and this then allowed the fishery to have a good amount of money to implement all the actions that they had identified that they needed to undertake. Unfortunately, COVID came along in early 2020 and slowed down progress a little bit, but once things normalized, the implementation process started and continued for the next 4 years, where a number of actions were implemented through the FIP by WWF and partners. And in December 2023, then ICV Africa, which is is a company with a group of vessels, decided that they wanted to announce then that they were going for full assessment and enter the assessment process to get certified. Very soon after, another group of vessels called SWIOTUNA also announced full assessment. And in August 2024, ICV Africa became the first ITM fishery to be certified and the first tuna fishery in South Africa to become certified. And so there was a great celebration there. And then a celebration then. So just sort of to finish up then, I just want to describe some of the improvements that this fishery undertook. Despite being a polar line fishery, there is always some interaction with other species other than the target species. And what they had been doing in the past was just recording what their catches were of their target species. But it's important to get an idea of the wider impact of the fishery. So they had to improve their data collection at sea, and that meant changing the logbooks so that the skippers could record interactions with birds and with marine mammals and sharks, and they had to increase their observer coverage. And this involved skipper training, which was undertaken. And once you have the data, then you can actually address the interactions and develop management strategies to deal with ETP species like birds, sharks, and marine mammals. And they developed a number of videos and undertook a lot of fisher training and materials about how to handle birds, how to handle sharks, and so on. And importantly, a task that is ongoing is the fishery working with the ICAT, which is the RFMO operating in the Atlantic Ocean, to develop harvest control rules for this particular stock. So just to finish off then, I'll finish off with this quote by Michelle Bellinger, who's here, who's the CEO of ICV Africa, just basically indicating that they really found the ITM project, or the MSC Improvement Program, as it's now called. They found it very useful in providing a framework and support and funding to move fast towards certification and full sustainability. So that's my presentation Thank you, Devin. Sorry it took a little longer, but I'm looking forward to some questions now.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Andrew, for the wonderful presentation. And just to thank both presenters for sharing with us what they have, also introducing us to the Fisheries Improvement Project, as well as the MSC Improvement Program. Looking at the time, we have like 15 minutes remaining. Maybe you can do a 10-minute question. Yeah. So I'd like to invite Doreen to take up this session for the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us for today's session. Thank you, Dr. Vineetha, for breaking down FIPs. I will not forget the whys the why framework that you took us through when explaining the FIPs. And Dr. Andrew, thank you also for taking us through the MSC Improvement Program. At this point, I would like to take questions from the participants. You can raise your hand, or you can just write your question on the chat box. I should be able to see that. Any questions from the team? Question, comments, or areas of clarification?
I have a question, Doreen.
Okay. Salim, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, the presentations were I really like them as a local artisanal fisher. Now, for the first presentation, which was made by I can't remember the name. Okay. Anyway,
Dr. Vineetha.
It's about the multi-stakeholders in FIP. Now, my question is, my English is not that good, but the question which I have is about these multi-stakeholders. Do they merge in terms of policies, guidelines, laws? I hope you understood that question of mine. That is the first one. Now, the second one is about which strategy has been used to bring these multi-stakeholders together? Which strategy was it used to bring them together so that they can work together? Because here we have local artisanal fishers, we have commercial fishers and industrial fishers. And you talked about the local knowledge and experience. Now, local knowledge, experience, skills, local skills, and they do not match. The local skills and experience do not match the commercial fishers. Now, how are you going to make sure that due to this local experience, because the commercial fishers is all about technology, modern fishing, which is not that all good according to. So I hope you understood my 2 or 3 questions. And the question, to Andrew on overfishing threats. Now, this is very okay. Most of the fishers in the world, as per the data, the local fishers are the majority. But our majority doesn't mean our majority, it is not a threat to our marine environment, because we are using, what do you call this? We are using, tunatumia nguvu kazi. No, the commercial fishers are using machinery. Ours, I don't see, it is a threat, but not a bigger threat than that of the commercial fishers, because we do fish in a day for 5 to 6 hours, to 7 maybe. If you go another extra time and you are exhausted, you go back home, and the area which you have used as a local artisanal fisher is a small area. But to machineries, the commercial fishers, they use a bigger area and they destroy a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you take one more before we request the presenters to try to respond to the issues and questions raised by Salim? I don't see a lot. I see a hand from Michael Marriott.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you to the speakers. I really enjoyed those presentations. I'm with the MSC, so I'm not going to ask a question to Andrew, but I do just want to Dr. Vineetha to comment on FIP implementers. What we have tended to see in our region is that FIP rely very heavily on funding. So a number of actions are outlined and funding is required to implement those actions. But I think there are a lot of actions that don't necessarily need external funding. They are allocated to different stakeholders, different segments of the stakeholder group. And we have seen that with FIPs, the strength of the FIP implementer is very important in maintaining momentum once individual strands of funding come to an end. I just wondered if you could comment on who you think or what sort of characteristics a FIP implementer needs to have and who fulfills that role best? Should it be NGOs? Does it work better when it's independent? Any information that you can give us to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Michael, I think we can allow the presenters to respond to those questions.
Doreen, you are not very audible.
I'm saying if you could respond to the questions raised by Salim and also comment on the question from Michael. You or
Okay,
Andrew?
I actually did not get the question by Salim. I did not understand it very clearly. Can you just repeat it once more to me? I understood that he had two questions, and but I was not very clear about his questions.
Perhaps I can summarize his question as I understood it. It was basically you have multi-stakeholders who have different policies or approaches to fisheries, and how do you basically end up dealing with those different approaches, or there are different policies that they employ. So how is a compromise reached within the Fishery Improvement Program? I think it's something like that.
Okay. So that's the major challenge of entering into a FIP, because there are different stakeholders and each of them have different needs and they need different outcomes from the fishery or the Fishery Improvement Program. So that is one of the major challenge when a FIP is implemented. And for each fishery, it is different also. So we will have to see what is the particular need of that particular stakeholder from the FIP, and where we can, how we can cater to that. That's how usually I work. So I have individual meetings with the different stakeholders, like each individual stakeholder group. I will go for individual meetings. Then I will understand what they actually need from the FIP and how the FIP can benefit from them. So there will be a path where these two can cross. So that's how I usually work. I hope I answered your question. Salim?
Salim,
Yes.
is that okay?
Yes, it is answered. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
And
How about the other question from...
regarding Michael's question, a FIP implementer, what should be the background of a FIP implementer, or what are the like, maybe I can say the qualities of a FIP implementer. You can see. I will always say that it will be better to have an NGO as a FIP implementer, but someone who doesn't actually have a stake or is not receiving direct funding from any of the stakeholders. Why I'm saying this is because very recently I did a management case study of different fisheries, and I interviewed different FIPs for this case study. And one of the group I interviewed, or FIPs I interviewed, was the Sri Lankan blue simmer crab. So according to the FIP implementers there, what benefited them is their independent status. And I found it very appealing because that group, actually, they were receiving funds from the NFI Council. They were not receiving funds from the exporters or any other stakeholders, the government from that particular region, but they were getting external funds. And because of that, they could state their terms to the different stakeholders. So being independent is very important for the FIP implementer. Not getting involved with any of the stakeholders or not being under the different stakeholders, that is very important for a FIP implementer. That's what I have understood. Because when we started our FIP implementation in India, at first it was funded by the exporters. And I know the limitations we had, but once we started receiving fund from MSC through the ITM program, then we could work independently, and we could dictate our terms or the FIPS terms to the different stakeholders. So that independence is very, very important, I think. Did I answer your question, Michael?
Thank you. Yes, you did. Yeah, it's trying to get an idea of how the momentum carries on beyond just the funding. So I do think the implementers are a very important part of the whole process of keeping the stakeholders' enthusiasm, keeping them going, because it is a long project, a long-term goal, I think, for most of these fisheries. So thank you.
Yeah. And also you will have to talk to each stakeholder and find out what they actually need from the FIP or what they can give to the FIP, like talk to them. And FIP implementer, that group or that person should be like a good coordinator, someone who can be a people person, who can interact with people, be diplomatic. This is what I have learned in the process I've gone through.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see it's almost 12:30, but we can take one more before we close. But in case we have any follow-up questions, you can always reach out to us and we'll request the speakers to clarify. However, I take note of what you've written in the chat box, that the topics are informative, but the time is a bit limiting. We'll see what to do in our future sessions. So do we have a last question before we close the session?
Perhaps Doreen, I can quickly answer Salim's question to me. I think it was basically about, different sectors targeting the same stock and them having different impacts on a stock. And of course, this can happen. I think proper management would entail an understanding of the status of that stock and how much that stock can be fished. In other words, how much can that stock provide, a total allowable catch, for example, and sort of a good management or governance system then would have a system in place which allocated that catch to different sectors, or allocated all the catch of one particular stock to one sector and the catch of another stock to another sector. So it's all part of combining understanding of stocks assessments and what's available to be fished with good management of the fishers involved, and fair and equitable allocation of those resources to the different sectors so that everybody can participate in the fishery to a good extent, getting good economic outcomes.
Thank you so much, Andrew. At this point, allow me to take the program back to Devon to close the meeting.
Yes, thank you very much to all presenters, as well as to all participants who have joined us till the end of the session. So we'll be sharing a post survey just to see if we met your expectations for this webinar. Also, if you can suggest any other topics for next year, and also how you want us to improve in the next coming webinars. Also, we'll be sharing the recordings for this, as well as the transcripts, and as well as the resources which will be on the presentations for further follow-up information, reading, and everything. Yes, and with that, I don't think I have any other thing else. Maybe we'll announce the next webinar once we agree. So probably early next year, but we'll still announce in due time for your save the date. Yes, so I don't think I have anything else. I don't know if, yeah. So maybe to request if we can all take a group photo, maybe if you can turn on your cameras briefly as we close the meeting. Okay, waiting for a few. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. And with that, I think if Andrew, you don't have anything else, we can close the meeting by now. Okay. Thank you very much. And I wish you a lovely day ahead. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.